I have a friend who recently went through a divorce, and he was struggling to make it through day to day. And so he asked his dad, who's a pastor, to come visit him. His dad came down and took him out to lunch and said, "Son, I know things are hard for you right now. There's 3 things that I want you to be doing every day." My friend, anticipating the spiritual wisdom that his dad was about to drop, thought it would be a Bible verse to memorize or maybe a book of the Bible to read or something like that. But his dad said, "Look, I want you to be eating healthy. I want you to be exercising, and I want you to be getting at least 7 hours of sleep every day." My friend was astounded. He was like, "This isn't what I expected." He expected something a lot more spiritual. But here's the thing. His dad's advice was very practical and at the same time very Christian wisdom. And God's just like that. He's like my friend's dad. He's a good father. The prophet Elijah had a time in his life where he got overwhelmed and stressed out and depressed. It was right after he called down the fire on the sacrifice at Mount Carmel, and he heard that Jezebel, the wife of King Ahab, wanted to kill him. And I'm sure he thought, "God, really? Is this how you're going to reward me after all that I've just done for you?" He probably started to doubt whether that he could trust God or not. Listen to the story in 1 Kings 19. Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush and sat down under it and prayed that he might die. "I've had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors." Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. All at once, an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank and then lay down again. The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." So he got up and ate and drank. Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. There he went into a cave and spent the night. When we get anxious and depressed, God comes to us and says, "Oh, son, have a little rest. Get some sleep. Here, have some food. Hey, why don't we take a vacation? Let's go for a really, really long walk. A pilgrimage that will be good for your soul. I know. Let's go walk the Camino de Santiago in Spain." He created us. He knows what we need. And for human beings, our physical health is fundamental to our spiritual health. Dan Scott says that God created matter, and for matter, matter matters. In the West, we've made spirituality much too narrow. It's all about the mind. We learn from Plato and the dualistic philosophers that the physical world is bad and that the spiritual world is good. That a human being is really just a soul that's trapped in a body, and that when we die, we shed these physical prisons that our soul lives in and we fly off into heaven somewhere up there. They taught us that we achieve salvation through the things that we learn. When we eradicate our ignorance and merge with truth with a capital T. The Greeks believed that the highest form of human activity, therefore, was just sitting around and thinking all day. The early Christian church eventually woke up to this twisted definition of humanity and labeled it a heresy called Gnosticism. But just because they labeled it a heresy doesn't mean that we today, as Christians even, have stopped believing in it. We in the West love to sit around and hear new ideas and debate things just as much as the Greeks did. The problem is, with modern technology, we have a lot more content to wade through than they did, both for work and for entertainment. And we Christians are no different. We're Gnostics too. We somehow believe that the only way to know God is through the content that we consume. We've become what one of my mentors, Fran Shaka, calls theologically constipated Christians. We consume never-ending lists of Christian books and sermons and podcasts and Bible studies, and yet our lives aren't anywhere closer to where we want them to be. We're more tired and more anxious and less like Christ. We're like the theologian, as Peter Kreeft says, who was given the choice between going directly to heaven or listening to a lecture on heaven. He chose the lecture. My point is this: if we misunderstand what a human being is, we'll misapply what a human being does. It's not only that we're overworking, as I've talked about in other videos, it's also that we're overworking one specific muscle, our mind, and neglecting everything else. It's the kind of work that we're doing which doubles our misery. If the highest form of human activity is sitting around thinking all day, then by God, we've achieved it. This is why we think we've made progress in the last 200 years. We've escaped the horrible fields of toil where we used to have to labor all day, and we've moved into comfortable air-conditioned boxes where we can sit around and type and think and talk all day. 200 years ago, 90% of the US population worked on a farm. Today it's less than 1%, and 85% of us are miserable in our jobs. Go figure. When we were on the farm, we would be outside all day getting vitamin D. We got exercise through baling hay or hauling laundry to the river. And along the way, we saw mountains and flowers and the beauty of God's creation. Today, we sit under LED lights, hunched over a computer screen, which is bad for our posture and bad for our eyes. Looking at PowerPoint presentations and Excel spreadsheets all day, oh, the pain. We might see a mountain every now and then, but it's only going to be on our Apple desktop background. What's more, we do it alone. With Slack for work and social media for play, we have the illusion of being connected to other people, but we're not. No wonder we have skyrocketing rates of mental illness today. We're not in community with other people. We're not living as we were created to live. A boat was created to sail on the ocean. If it's trying to sail down an asphalt highway, it's not going to have a good time. And likewise, if you put a human being in a chair looking at a computer screen all day, it's not going to be happy. And if you think we're miserable now, wait until all of life only stimulates the brain and we live in virtual realities. Why have yoga and CrossFit and veganism and juice cleanses achieved almost religious status in our society, commanding radical devotion of their followers? Because our bodies have been starved of exercise and sunlight and good food and sleep. And people have spiritual experiences when they do what is good for their body. Then they become evangelists of what changed them. If Christianity doesn't recover a biblical view of what it means to be human, the number of spiritual but not religious people will only continue to grow. And Christians will continue to be confused at why they're both unhappy and shrinking in number. Christianity says that a human being is the marriage of flesh and spirit. It says that the physical world is good and is to be taken care of. It says that our bodies are good and are to be taken care of. Doing these things both pleases God and is good for our souls. So get out of your head. Get out from behind your computer screens into God's creation, around other people, doing something active with your body, and you'll be amazed at how your spirit will leap and sing inside of you. I don't know about you, but I'm burned out on Christian small groups that are only about getting men together to dissect words and debate Calvinism versus Arminianism. If deep down you'd rather join a men's group that goes camping or cycling or surfing together, and then you get back together and talk about how amazing God's creation is, good news. God would rather you do that.